Police abused their power on a black man not knowing he was a high-ranking Special Forces trainer. You people always think you're untouchable. That was the last thing the officer said before slamming my face into the hood of my own car. Not knowing I'd trained men like him to survive in war zones he couldn't even pronounce. It started like so many stories do quietly. A regular Thursday evening. I was leaving a late-night training session at the Veterans Center, still in my athletic sweats, keys in hand, walking toward my SUV. The parking lot was mostly empty, lit by the orange halo of tired street lamps, when I heard the crackle of a police radio behind me. "Hey, step away from the vehicle." The voice was sharp, authoritative, but there was something else in it. Suspicion, contempt, that familiar heat that so often follows people who look like me. I turned slowly, hands visible. "It's my car," I said, calm, measured, always measured. "I've got the keys right here." But it didn't matter. He'd already decided who I was, or more accurately, who I wasn't. He was young, white, overeager, maybe fresh out of the academy. His partner stayed behind, arms crossed, silent, watching. "You match the description," he said. "Tall, black male, gray hoodie. There was a break-in down the block." "There's 100 tall black men in this city wearing hoodies," I replied. "What else you got?" That did it. He charged forward, grabbing my wrist before I could fully lift the keys into view. "Stop resisting," he barked before I even moved. I didn't fight back. I couldn't not here. Not now. Not like this. He shoved me against the hood with enough force to make my breath catch. My vision blurred for a second. "You got ID?" he demanded. "In my back pocket," I said. He reached for it, yanked it out, and paused. "Captain Elijah Warren, U.S. Army Special Forces. My photo, my credentials, my rank." For a split second, he looked uncertain. But pride, like a parasite, doesn't loosen easily. "So you're military?" he said. "Doesn't make you above the law." "No," I said, staring him dead in the eye. "But it makes me know how it's supposed to be enforced." Still, he didn't back off. He clicked the cuffs around my wrists like he was sealing a victory. "You're being detained for questioning," he said, reciting the words by rote, as if that made it righteous. His partner shifted uncomfortably. She hadn't spoken the entire time, but I saw her glance at my ID, then back at me, something flickering behind her eyes. They put me in the back of the cruiser, windows up, sweat sticking to my skin. Not a word, not a phone call, not even an explanation of my rights. 10 minutes later, they still hadn't moved. "Where are we going?" I asked. Silence. Then the radio crackled, a voice commanding, older. "Unit 241, what's your 10 to 20? The young officer leaned forward. "We've detained a suspect at the Easton lot. Possible match to the 10 to 31. Name of the suspect? Elijah Warren." Pause. A long, loaded silence. Then, "Release him immediately. That's Captain Elijah Warren. He trained my son in Fort Benning. You better pray he doesn't file a report." The young cop's face turned the color of ash. I watched as his hands fumbled with the door lock. He opened the back seat and stood stiffly, avoiding my eyes. "You're free to go, sir," he muttered. I stepped out slowly, rubbing my wrists, red from the cuffs. The partner finally spoke. "We're sorry. It was a mistake." "No," I said. "It was a choice." The next day, the story spread like wildfire inside the force. Not because they cared about what they'd done, but because they realized who they had done it to. The young officer was quietly pulled from street patrol and sent to administrative leave. But I didn't let it go. I filed a formal complaint, not for me but for all the men who didn't have the ID, the rank, or the protection of a powerful name. I wasn't just going to walk away. I'd seen too many of us beaten into silence. The mayor called me personally, offering apologies. So did the police chief. But I didn't want apologies. I wanted change. So I called a press conference. I stood before a podium wearing my uniform, medals pinned to my chest, the photos of bruised black veterans behind me. "My name is Captain Elijah Warren," I began. And yesterday, I was treated like a criminal for walking to my car. If this happens to Muhat, do you think happens to the young man in baggy jeans with no military background? What happens to the quiet father picking up groceries at night? What happens to the teenage boy with no ID at all? The cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. But more importantly, people listened. I met with lawmakers, advocated for body cam policy reform, worked with civil rights groups, created mandatory scenario-based racial bias training delivered by veterans like me who knew what real threats looked like. But something deeper haunted me. The look in that young officer's eyes. That conviction. That blind certainty. He didn't see me as a man. He saw a category. And that's what we needed to break. 2 months later, I ran into the partner again off duty, at a gas station. She approached me cautiously. "I didn't say anything that night," she said. "I should have. I've been going through the new training. It's different now. Harder. Better." I nodded. It starts small, but it starts. And in the weeks that followed, I saw it. Quiet shifts, cops volunteering at youth centers, body cameras staying on, less shouting, more listening. It wouldn't fix everything, but it was a start. Because the badge isn't supposed to be a weapon. It's supposed to be a vow. They say time heals all wounds, but that's only true when someone stops cutting. After the press conference, things didn't go quiet. They got louder. Emails poured in from veterans across the country, Black, Latino, Asian, each with their own story. Wrongful stops, unlawful searches, officers who couldn't tell the difference between suspicion and skin color. One message stuck with me. It was from a young Marine named Darius, just 22. He'd been pulled over 3 times in the same week, all while wearing his uniform. The last time, the officer made him lie face down on the sidewalk. People walked past him like he was trash. "He asked me what I was doing in that neighborhood," Darius wrote. "I told him I lived there. He didn't believe me. I invited Darius to the next community outreach event I hosted. We gathered in a high school gym, folding chairs set in a circle, no podiums, no cameras. Just stories." Darius sat stiffly, scanning the room. Then he stood up. "You know what hurts most?" he asked, voice trembling. "My little sister saw it. She used to think I was a hero. Now she just looks scared." Silence. Then an older man, retired fire chief, spoke. "You are a hero, but even heroes get broken when systems stay the same." From there, it became a wave, a movement. We launched a mentorship program between veterans and local youth. We called it The Shield Within. Our goal wasn't to train them to fight, but to teach them how to stand, how to speak, and how to stay alive when the world saw them as a threat. And yet, the irony was thick. I was training young men how to survive encounters with the very people I once taught to protect them. Meanwhile, the police department was in damage control. Chief Harvell invited me to a closed-door meeting at the station. I almost didn't go, but something told me I needed to. The room smelled like fresh coffee and old politics. Suits lined the table with Chief Harvell at the head. "Captain Warren," he said, "thank you for coming. We're reviewing our protocols and disciplinary procedures. We'd like your input." I didn't sit. "With all due respect, Chief, you don't need my input. You need a mirror." One of the officers at the table, Detective Rice, I think, shifted in his chair. "We've implemented anti-bias training. Isn't that progress?" I walked to the whiteboard behind them and picked up a marker. "Let me show you something." I drew 2 stick figures, one labeled Black Man, the other White Man. Under each I wrote, tall, wearing hoodie, walking late at night. "Same traits," I said, "but you stopped the first." "Why?" The room was silent. "Because bias lives here," I said, tapping my temple. "And here," tapping the badge on a nearby table. "Until that changes, nothing does." Afterward, as I was leaving, someone jogged up behind me in the parking lot. It was the young officer, the one who had slammed me against my car. "Sir, wait," he said, breath catching in his throat. I turned. I didn't speak. He looked thinner than I remembered. Eyes sunken, hair unkempt. I wanted to apologize, not just because I got caught, but because I've been learning, watching. Too didn't know who you were. But I see now. I see what I was taught to see. It wasn't enough. But it was honest. What's your name? I asked. Officer Lang. I held out my hand. He hesitated, then shook it. Learn better, I said. Then teach others. A week later, I got a call from City Hall. The mayor invited me to help design a new civilian oversight board. One with teeth. Real power. The kind that could audit complaints, fire corrupt officers, and make those records public. I don't want this to be symbolic, she told me. We're ready to clean house. Then start with transparency, I said. No more sealed files. No more secret settlements. Let the public see what they pay for. It wasn't long before my name started circulating in city council meetings. Some people wanted me to run for office. Others wanted me to lead police reform statewide. But I wasn't looking for power. I was looking for accountability. Meanwhile, the department tried to rebrand. They hosted barbecues, started youth cadet programs. The chief held press conferences with slogans like, "Stronger Together." Felt hollow. PR, not principle. Until the next incident. His name was Andre, 19, college freshman. Walking home from a night class with a backpack full of textbooks and a hoodie pulled over his head to fight the rain. 2 officers pulled up behind him, guns drawn. He was forced to kneel in a puddle for 10 minutes until backup arrived and confirmed he was a student. No weapons, no threat, just a black boy with books. I met Andre the next morning. His hands still trembled as he held his coffee. I thought they were going to shoot me, he said. And I didn't even know why. His mother called me later that day, crying. He won't leave the house, she whispered. He keeps looking over his shoulder. That's when I made my decision. I returned to the precinct not as a guest, but as a force. I demanded that the 2 officers involved be removed from the field immediately. Internal Affairs launched an investigation, and thanks to the new oversight board, it didn't disappear into silence. The officers were suspended. One resigned before facing discipline. Andre testified before City Council 2 weeks later. Calm, brave, unshaken. I just want to be safe in my own skin, he said. Is that too much? The room erupted in a standing ovation. But I wasn't clapping. I was thinking about how many Andres came before him. How many never got to testify. How many were buried with no press conference, no podium, no justice. That night, I stood alone in the empty Veteran Center gym. The lights were dim. I looked up at the rafters where our flags hung: Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. I whispered the names of the men I'd lost. Some in combat. Some right here on American streets. Then I made a vow. I won't stop. Not until the uniform means the same thing in every neighborhood. Not until the law stops seeing us as suspects first. The next morning, we launched Phase 2 of the Shield Within. We started going into high schools, talking to teens, holding simulations of traffic stops with real officers watching. We showed them what fear looks like when it's wearing a badge. We trained recruits on empathy, not just tactics. How to read a situation, how to listen. And we told them what happens when they get it wrong. But change comes slow. Some officers pushed back, called it woke nonsense, said we were turning kids against law enforcement. No, I told them, we're teaching them how to survive you, and if that offends you, you're the problem. It earned me death threats, hate mail, anonymous calls in the middle of the night. But it also earned respect from the people who mattered. Andre started volunteering with us. Darius came back to mentor new recruits. Even Officer Lang, the one who cuffed me, became a liaison for new cadets. He told his story at every training session. I got it wrong, he said once, choking up. I almost ruined a man's life because I thought being a cop meant never being wrong. It was imperfect, messy, full of friction. But it was working. By the end of the year, complaints against the force dropped by 42%. Civilian engagement doubled. And for the first time, Black residents in the community reported a higher sense of trust in law enforcement than in the decade before. Still, I knew we weren't done. Because somewhere out there, another Andre was walking home. Somewhere, another officer was gripping his weapon a little too tight. And somewhere, someone still believed a hoodie was a threat. The problem with progress is that it's fragile. One headline, one death, one video, and the whole thing can unravel. That's exactly what happened. Her name was Tanya Ellis, 42, black, mother of 3, school librarian. She was driving home from a teacher appreciation event when her taillight went out. Simple stop, nothing unusual. Except the cop who pulled her over was new to the force. A transfer from out of state. No connection to the community. No history here. And no patience. Bodycam footage showed Tanya handing over her license, explaining calmly that she didn't know the light was out. The officer seemed agitated. Demanded she step out of the car. She asked why. That was all it took. He opened the door, pulled her out, slammed her to the ground. In front of her youngest daughter, who sat screaming in the back seat. When the video leaked, the city exploded. Protests began the next morning. Peaceful at first, signs, songs, chants. But by evening, someone threw a bottle. Police in riot gear responded with tear gas. By nightfall, windows were broken, sirens blared, and the pain we tried so hard to heal cracked open like a wound left untreated. I was at home when the call came in. The mayor's voice trembled. "Elijah," she said, "we need you downtown. It's bad." I arrived to chaos. Smoke in the air. People shouting from both sides. I waded through the crowd in my uniform, trying to make myself seen, trying to be a bridge. But bridges burn quickly in fire. A young man recognized me. "That's him," he yelled. "That's the captain they arrested. Tell them, man. Tell them this ain't new." Someone handed me a bullhorn. I hesitated. Then I raised it to my lips. "My name is Captain Elijah Warren," I said. "And I felt what you feel. I've bled on these streets. But I need you to listen." The crowd stilled, just for a moment. "This is not just about Tanya. Or me. Or Andre. It's about what we do next. We can burn everything down or we can build something that lasts." "Why not both?" someone shouted. Cheers erupted. The tension was thick. A rock sailed over my shoulder and shattered a squad car window behind me. I turned toward the police line. Officer Lang was among them. Our eyes met. He gave a slow nod. Then I did something reckless. I walked into the no man's land between protesters and police, raised both hands, and shouted, "And no more fear. No more silence." For 10 seconds, there was nothing but breathing. Then, a young protester stepped forward. A woman in a hoodie. She joined me. Then another. And another. Soon, we formed a human line between police and protesters. A wall of veterans, teachers, students, and mothers. We didn't chant. We didn't yell. We just stood. And that's what changed everything. Because for once, both sides stopped seeing each other as enemies. They saw people. The next day, Tanya Ellis gave a televised statement from her hospital bed. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. I cooperated. I complied. And I still ended up in the hospital. What would have happened if I hadn't? What would have happened if I looked scared? If I screamed? She paused. My daughter saw it all. And she asked me, "Mom, are the police bad guys?" Tanya started to cry. I didn't know what to say. That moment sparked a reckoning. The officer who hurt her was fired within 48 hours, charged with assault. His body cam was reviewed alongside 2 other incidents, both dismissed in his former precinct. Both involving black women. They'd covered it up. But not this time. This time, the city said no more. City Council passed emergency reform mandating a statewide misconduct registry for all law enforcement. No more transferring bad cops from one department to the next without consequence. And I was appointed to chair it. The first thing I did was name it after someone who never got justice. The Kendrick Hayes Registry, I said, unveiling the new law, because Kendrick didn't have a camera, and no one believed his mother. But we believe her now. Tanya joined me on stage that day. Her daughter too. She's sleeping again, Tanya told me. It's slow, but she's healing. We smiled, but we both knew how easily the scars could return. Later that week, I sat alone in my truck, parked at the edge of an abandoned lot. The same place I'd been wrongfully arrested a year before. The hood still had a faint dent where my face hit it. I ran my fingers across it. This was my ground zero. I trained soldiers for combat. I'd led men through gunfire, watched them fall, carried them home. But nothing prepared me for the battlefield of my own hometown. I pulled out my phone and opened an email I hadn't responded to. It was from Officer Lang. Captain Warren, I wanted to thank you, not just for the second chance, but for making me see what I couldn't before. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. Every day, I've applied to join the Oversight Board as a liaison. If accepted, I'll make sure the next generation of officers understands that protecting the public starts with respecting them. Lang. I hit reply. Lang, you were given power once and you used it wrong. Now you've earned the right to use it right. Welcome aboard. EW. 3 months passed. The streets quieted. The registry grew. The shield within expanded to 5 cities. And civilian complaints dropped further. But something deeper changed. You could feel it in how officers spoke to kids on corners. How they approached a traffic stop. How they paused just long enough to ask, "Are you okay?" before reaching for cuffs. And you could see it in the eyes of people like Andre, like Darius, like Tanya's daughter. They were still wary, still cautious, but they were beginning to hope. The real turning point came at the city's annual Unity Parade. For years, it had been a hollow gesture. Marching bands, balloons, politicians waving from convertibles. But this year, the crowd was different. Veterans marched beside police officers. Community leaders rode on floats with local youth. And at the front of the parade, Tanya Ellis carried a sign. "I survived, now let's rebuild." The crowd roared. When I stepped onto the stage to speak, I didn't use a script. I looked out at the faces young, old, tired, proud. And I said, I was once told I matched a description. But we are not descriptions. We are not threats. We are not cases or files or warnings on a screen. We are people. With names. With families. With stories. I paused. And today, we write a new story together. The applause was thunderous. Not because of me, but because it belonged to all of us now. That night, I returned to the parking lot one final time. Stood beside the dented hood. This time, I wasn't angry. I was at peace. I touched the metal, then turned away, leaving it behind like a scar that no longer hurt. The battle wasn't over. It never would be. But the war had changed. And this time, we were the ones writing the rules. Change, no matter how deep or widespread, is only as strong as the people who keep it alive. And for a while, I thought maybe just maybe it'd turned a corner. The department had new leadership. The community was engaged. We had real oversight and public reporting. Cops were held accountable. But reality has a way of testing your faith. The final test came on a rainy Tuesday. It was early fall. Leaves wet on the sidewalks. A chill in the air. I was speaking at a college panel on justice and reform when my phone buzzed. It was from Andre. They're trying to silence the registry. I stepped out of the lecture hall. Called him immediately. He sounded furious. There's a motion in city council to defund the misconduct registry, he said. They're saying it's too expensive, too aggressive. That it's hurting recruitment. I clenched my jaw. Recruitment's not the goal. Integrity is. They're voting in 2 days. Quietly. Buried in the budget. Felt like betrayal all over again. But it wasn't just politics, it was fear. Fear from those who never wanted to be seen. Fear of consequences. And fear I knew was the last wall we had to break. That night I called everyone. Journalists, civil rights attorneys, parents, pastors, veterans. We organized a town hall. We brought cameras. And we told the city the truth. Andre stood in front of the crowd, voice clear and furious. You gave us the tools to survive, he said. Now you want to take them away? Tanya stepped forward, holding up a photograph of her daughter. She used to be afraid to walk past a cop. Now she helps train them. You think that's not worth funding? Then I took the mic. I've worn a uniform most of my adult life, I said. But no badge, no rank, no title has ever meant more than justice. If you defund this registry, you're not saving money, you're buying silence. And silence, in this city, has cost us too much already. The room erupted in applause. 2 nights later, City Hall was packed beyond capacity. Hundreds showed up, some in uniform, some in shirts that read "Know our names." Council members squirmed. The motion failed. The registry was safe. For now. But I understood something that night. Change is never permanent. It must be protected, guarded, fed, like a flame in the wind. So I doubled down. We launched the Warren Fellowship, a training and leadership program for young activists, ex-military, law students, and even reformed officers. Its goal was simple: build a generation that could lead with strength and empathy. Andre was one of the first fellows. So was Darius. Tanya helped design the curriculum. Officer Lang guest lectured. We held retreats, taught de-escalation and constitutional rights. But we also taught something softer, something deeper. We taught how to listen, because listening is where justice begins. In the final session of our first year, we asked every fellow to share one thing they had once believed and no longer did. Andre said, "I used to think being quiet kept me safe." Darius said, "I thought pain made me weaker. Now I know it makes me fight smarter." Lang said, "I believed power meant control. Now I know it means accountability." And I looked around the room, black and brown, young and old, all linked by something more powerful than anger. I said, "I used to think this fight would end in my lifetime. I don't anymore. But I believe in you. And that's enough." We closed the night with a candlelight vigil. No speeches, no chants, just light. The next morning, I visited the cemetery. I went to Kendrick Hayes' grave. I stood in silence, placed a folded flag beside his stone. "You didn't get justice," I whispered, "but you sparked it." And then I walked away, leaving the flag as a promise. Months passed. The Warren Fellowship grew. Other cities called, asking for our model. The federal government requested data. Schools added our simulations into civics curriculums. But I stayed in the city. This was still home. One evening, I walked past a police cruiser parked at the edge of a park. A white officer stood beside a young black boy, 10, maybe 11. He wasn't in trouble. They were just talking, laughing even. It shouldn't have felt radical, but it did. Later, I'd learned that officer was a graduate of our program. And the boy, Tanya's nephew. Some things come full circle. 1 year after the incident in the parking lot, the city held a ceremony to honor community leaders. I didn't plan to attend, but the mayor insisted. She handed me the final award, called it the Guardian of Justice Medal. I accepted it for every name never spoken, every wound never healed. And when I took the podium, I spoke the last words of the night. "Power isn't who wears the badge," I said. "It's who defends the dignity of others. It's the mother who testifies, the boy who speaks up, the officer who changes, the community that refuses to go quiet." Then I looked into the crowd, at Andre, at Tanya, at Lang. "And it's you. All of you." People rose to their feet, not for applause, but because they understood. This wasn't about a medal. It was about the fire we'd built together, and the vow to never let it die. That night, I went home, took off my boots, and sat on the porch as the wind moved through the trees. The scars were still there, but so was the hope. And for the first time in years, I truly believed we were going to be okay. Not because injustice was gone, but because we'd learned how to stand, how to speak, and how to rise again and again until justice wasn't the exception. It was the rule. The end.